So, Nick, we did an extensive video breaking down all the ways Alexander Volkanovski can remain the champion at UFC 298 and what strategies he should employ to defeat Ilia Topuria. Now, today I want to do the exact opposite of that. I want to talk about how Ilia can win this fight because he's got a monumental challenge in front of him. Volkanovski is good everywhere, and he's proven that he can win fights everywhere, and not just win fights everywhere, but defeat people at what they do best. Just think back to the Yair Rodriguez fight where he completely outclassed him on the feet.
Right.
So a couple of things to note here. Volkanovski has a very high output when it comes to significant strikes. He lands over 6 significant strikes per minute to Topuria's 4.5.
Insane.
But Topuria lands with very high accuracy and also extreme power. So I think if Topuria can match or just be right under Volkanovski's significant strike per minute threshold, that will give him a real advantage because he's probably going to land the bigger power shots. And as we saw with Strickland Duplessis, the judges tend to favor the power shots over the shots that are, a really crisp jab or a crisp leg kick. If you're landing heavy body kicks, if you're landing overhands, if you're landing good straight rights, good power punches, then you're going to have an advantage on the judge's scorecard in a fight that could very likely go to decision. Now, the other thing I think he should do is shoot the takedowns because he's very highly accurate with the takedowns as well. Almost 60% of the takedowns he shoots, he lands. So if he can get a couple of those in a couple of the rounds, he can likely start to sway a round that will likely be close on the feet. So how do you see a path to victory for Topuria, and what do you think he needs to do?
Well, I like your reference to the Duplessis-Strickland fight, but I will say the difference is that Sean Strickland is perfectly content with fighting moving backwards all night, and I don't really see Volkanovski or Topuria being backwards moving fighters. They're both pressure guys, and one of them's going to have to take a step back eventually, but that's not their style. That's not their MO. That's not usually what you find them doing. And I think Topuria has a lot of power in those hands, and when he does ground his feet and start throwing heavy leather, he's able to find his target, and his eyes are really good so he can find his target even if it's moving, which is something that's very important for him because Volkanovski not only is completely willing to stand in a pocket and trade with somebody and has tons of experience doing it, mostly because he's been the shorter opponent against all of the guys in his title reign and on his way up to the belt. So he's more than familiar with that element of the fight, but he throws just as heavy leather as Ilia, and if Ilia decides to stay too stagnant in those situations, Volkanovski can start to use those creative angles and stance switches and all sorts of different footwork techniques that he does to leave Ilia one step behind and then find his openings on places where Ilia can't find shots. So I do think it is important that Ilia goes in there and does what's gotten him to the dance, but at the same time, you have to be able to adjust and learn on the fly. And learning what Volkanovski is going to do next is a very difficult thing. And that's why I really like your point about the takedowns. It's so important when you're going against somebody who's really good on the feet to be able to threaten the takedown. And, Ilia Topuria is great at it, but when you're fighting a guy that's a little bit shorter than you and has a low center of gravity, also his takedown defense is incredible. He comes out of the same camp that Israel Adesanya figured out all of his takedown defense in. It's way easier said than done. And if Islam Makhachev had all the trouble he had trying to get inside and close the distance and then ultimately get Volkanovski to the ground and keep him there, I have to assume that Ilia Topuria is also going to be met with those same difficulties and challenges when he does try to take Volkanovski to the ground, which is why I think Ilia really needs to mix the striking and the grappling together. If he can seamlessly flow between his really creative boxing, his good wrestling, and his ultimately high-paced pressure, I think he has a good chance at stealing some early rounds, which would ultimately take him into the championship rounds. I know Volkanovski got way more experience in the championship rounds, but if he's able to get a slightly gassed or a slightly less explosive Volkanovski in rounds 4 and 5, he could find himself being more effective with his takedowns and with his wrestling.
Yeah, that's a solid point, and I think angles are going to come into play quite a bit here because, as you said, Topuria does like to plant his feet and trade, and Volk is perfectly content. He's not a fighter that fights like Izzy where he moves around the cage.
Right.
That's not his MO. He does like to come forward as well, but he's so good with his lateral movement that if he has to be elusive around the cage, he can certainly do that.
Yeah.
And if he's able to land some shots on a stagnant target, especially leg kicks and stuff like that. That's going to start to slow down Ilia's wrestling efforts. So I think it's going to be really important for Ilia, and I do see him kind of commanding the center of the cage in this fight, just because I think, blow for blow, as far as the boxing is concerned, his strikes are going to be more, they're going to land with more power than Volkanovski's are. Also, Volkanovski was just knocked out in his last fight, and I don't think Volk's a very smart fighter. I don't think he's going to be coming in there trying to test his chin against Ilia Topuria and be a hero. So I do expect Volk's game plan to be to move a little bit. And if he can kind of move around Topuria and really start to whack those legs with some good leg kicks, land some good body shots, he could rope Ilia into chasing a little bit. And when you start chasing, that's when you get knocked out, because you basically give your opponent all the momentum that they need to knock you out. So it's going to be very important for Ilia, if he does command the center of the cage, to really try to box Volkanovski in. Look for some calf kicks. Look for some quad kicks, some high leg kicks, the body kicks, those check hooks that are going to be short, and be very careful in the clinch. Volkanovski's got an excellent clinch. We talked about this with his motives to victory, and I think it's going to be very important for Volkanovski to establish a good clinch game and land those short hooks and elbows, but conversely for Ilia to not take too much damage when Volk is clinching, because Volk's not had an opponent similar in height in quite some time, if you think about the last few fighters that he's fought. So it's going to be very important for Ilia to look for some changes in levels when he's in the clinch with Volk, not take too much damage with the short shots, disengage, and keep working those angles. I think if he can keep Volkanovski pinned, he can really start to have some success. And if he can test that chin that was just rocked by Islam Makhachev in his last fight, he can really potentially shock the world here. So it's going to be quite interesting to see. I think there's paths to victory for both men, but I actually see both paths being kind of narrow.
Yeah, those are all great points. And I'm going to say something that sounds a little bit cliche, but everybody always says that fighting is a mental game, and to an extent it is. It's very much a physical endeavor as well, but I think the mental side of this is important in this fight. Ilia Topuria thinks he's the best fighter on the planet, and oftentimes you don't have people believing that they're the best on the planet until after they get the belt and then ultimately are able to defend it at least once. Ilia already thinks he's the best in the world, and that's going to be something that serves him, I think. You hear people talk about flow and the flow state, and you hear people talking about getting into your rhythm. And what does that mean? A lot of people think that it means that you're moving with some sort of, continuous cadence, and you're kind of finding yourself almost looking like you're dancing and doing the same movements over and over again. But Ilia Topuria really needs to have the confidence and the ability to adapt his game plan as the fight goes on. And I think if he's able to mix the martial arts, I can't emphasize this enough, if he can mix the martial arts together, that will greaten his chances of winning against Volkanovski. If you go in there and you're a specialist against Volkanovski, oddly enough, he's going to go and do your thing better than you can. Go take Yair Rodriguez, for example. He's going to beat Yair on the feet, and then he's going to make it look easy when he starts to mix all the martial arts together. Brian T. City Ortega can submit pretty much anybody at featherweight.
Can't submit Volk.
Can't submit Volkanovski. So the one test we haven't really seen out of anybody at featherweight when they go to test Volkanovski for his belt is a true mixing of the martial arts while entering that flow state, while coming in with tons of confidence. All of these aspects are very important. And I think if Ilia comes in with the confidence that we've known him to have, and he appears to have, whether it's on camera, off camera, or anywhere in between, I think that he has a good chance, but he's got to understand that his skills, both on the feet, with his kicks, with his punches, and on the grappling, from the takedowns to the clinch work to the cage work and everything on the ground, even submissions, has to be at work and has to be on full display. Otherwise, you're just going to be basically somebody with less weapons going against somebody who's completely equipped everywhere the fight can possibly go.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I do think that mixing the martial arts is the only way to beat Volk. And as you saw with Islam Makhachev, he had to mix the martial arts to get his hand raised. He was losing some of the grappling exchanges in the first fight, and he came back and won the second fight by head kick, which I don't think anybody would have accurately predicted.
Right. If it weren't for striking, Islam likely wouldn't have got his hand raised against the Volkanovski in the very first fight.
As crazy as that sounds. And so the thing about the moment, too, for Ilia Topuria. Ilia Topuria has laid the foundation for either becoming one of the biggest stars in the UFC or risking looking like a fool a little bit. When you come out and you talk about the guy who's been the absolute king of featherweight for years now, defeated the who's who, and has recycled that division with Max Holloway 3 times. When you come out and say, I'm going to make it look easy, I'm going to knock this guy out, this guy has no business in there with me, that's giving off Conor McGregor, Jose Aldo vibes.
Right.
Now, we have seen fighters talk that type of game before and then completely fall short when the moment arose.
Colby Covington.
Colby is a perfect example of that. So is Ilia Topuria going to be Colby Covington, or is he going to be Conor McGregor, where he actually follows through with what he says he's going to do? Because if he is, and if that happens, if he's able to just easily defeat Volk and knock him out like he's saying he's going to do, we have the next big star on our hands.
Absolutely, but I will say the dance partner really does matter in that situation. Volkanovski is not going to become a head case like Jose Aldo did.
No.
I really think that after we saw what Conor McGregor brought to the UFC and the entire entertainment era that followed it, you have to understand that everybody kind of knows, at least the guys at the highest level. A lot of the 600 fighters on the roster, there's about 10 of them that really do understand that this is a business, this is entertainment, and we're here to put on a good show. And even if he does say some things that get under my skin, at the end of the day, we're business partners, we're doing business, we're trying to drum up some drama to get people interested in what we're doing.
Jose did not understand that.
Jose
he was
had
not
no
subscribed
clue.
to that
No,
thinking.
and I don't think anybody in Brazil knew that what Conor McGregor was doing. And he gave Jose Aldo a great opportunity to fight in front of more people than he ever has before and lined his pockets full of cash. So Jose Aldo and him are all good now. Everything's kosher over there now. But Volkanovski is not going to take the bait on that. He understands the promotional side of this thing. And honestly, I'm so excited to see Volkanovski back in there. I thought it was really cool that he stepped in short notice to fight Islam. And I think this is the ultimate test for him to see if he's still got what it takes. Ilia Topuria is absolutely no joke. I think the hype is real. I think the confidence is well-deserved. And if he's able to go out there and beat Volkanovski and, in his words, make it look easy, then you've got a mega star on your hands.
Couldn't have said it better myself.